So, good morning, Sweden. Thanks for having me. And that should be, yes, we're on. All right. So, apparently I was asked to give a little inspiration on what we call monitoring. Yeah. And the talk is called Cloudvoyance. Now, does anybody know what this is? Who painted this? Nobody? Okay. Nobody even wants to give a chance? If you know where I'm from, maybe that could be a hint. No? Okay. So this is a painting, a famous painting by René Magritte. He was a famous Belgian artist. A little bit of a crazy guy. He had these crazy ideas of paintings. And you know, the guy with the bowler. And that's him. The apple face. That's him. The pipe. That's him. And he had a painting called Clairvoyance. It means foreseeing. It's like a truth sayer. You know those guys with balls, crystal balls, where they pretend that they can foresee your future. And clairvoyance is actually a little bit, Cloudvoyance is actually a little bit taken from that title from the painting, because he tried to mimic and see into the future and see what you could do and become. And he tried to paint it. That's a little bit the topic part. So that for an intro. My name is Mike Martin. I'm a former MVP, but now a happy Microsoft employee. So I joined the dark side. They got milk and cookies. That's always fun. I still try to be as honest as possible when it comes down to Microsoft technology. So if it's bad, I'm also willing to say so. So maybe my colleagues won't appreciate, but we also make mistakes. I run a Belgian user group on Azure, and I also organize some smaller conferences in Belgium, like Digorama. Probably you heard of it. It's some of the speakers here also went there, just making a little fuss. Yeah. But enough of me. Let's see. So this talk is about monitoring. Who's today doing active development on Azure or using applications and actually providing monitoring on top of that? Any kind of monitoring. Half of the, hey, that's nicely divided, that side of the room. So should I put that as experts and non-experts? Maybe I ask for some opinions later. So for those on the expert side, do you know all the capabilities of monitoring in Azure? Can you give me them all? All right, that's the correct answer, because a lot of people say, oh, monitoring, that's only application insights. No, it's just like saying security, that's only Azure AD. No, if you take a look, if you take a look at all the monitoring capabilities, it's diagnostics logs, it's Kudu when you're doing app services. Who's doing app services in Azure? Are you using Kudu? Yes. Yeah, you can speak up. Who's using Kudu? So raise your hands again. App services doing who? Raise your hands. And those who are doing Kudu, keep your hands up. Oh, yeah, all right, at least. So for those who don't know Kudu, shame on you. Kudu is one of the coolest tools we've ever built. It was the baby of David Ebo and his team. And it's an endpoint for everything which is deployment, Git-based, but also you can have monitoring from there. You can have some diagnostics from there. You can do dumps in there. It's a console. You can have a lot of stuff in there, and it's really underestimated as a powerful tool. And you can even implement it in your own websites if you want to host it on the site, because it's an open source thing, and really worth looking at it. We also have Telemetry, aka Azure Insights, aka Metrics, aka I don't know when we're going to rename the damn thing. I mean, the marketing guys have a really solid job. They do like a marketing rebranding every so many weeks. So once we get accustomed to it, we have to change our slides back. That's a really annoying thing. Audit logs. The one underestimated, or activity logs as we call them now. See, I missed an aka. It's one underestimated piece. And then, of course, we have something you know, Azure Application Insights. Who's using that today? All right, a couple of people. Azure Network Watcher. Any people here monitoring actively for their security and their troubleshooting communications? Who never heard of Network Watcher? A lot of people. All right. Security Center. You all are aware that there's something called Security Center, right? Right. And then we have the most fun one, Azure Log Analytics, OMS, or Operational Insights, or formerly known as System Center Advisor. That's all the same product, yeah. Which all is being exposed by something we call Azure Monitor. This is the full landscape we have on Azure monitoring capabilities. And you can use them for as many things as you want to. You can use them in a hybrid situation. You can use them even for mobile applications. If you're building mobile applications, you can integrate with tools that we have on the side, like Azure DevOps and so on and so on. I'm going to go through some of the features that you probably won't know and how you can cope with some of the things that you can run into the. Right. So really scattered, but all really, really useful. All right. And this is not, all right. Slightly, I'm just going to go with the keyboard. It's going to be way faster. So if you take a look at what we have underneath, if we segregate, we have everything which is on the networking side. We look into Network Watcher, but also the metrics that we have on networking. We have the virtual machines that we can monitor with data ingestion and correlation. On an operating system level, middleware, backend, we can monitor all these things, and they either go through application insights. We use log analytics for that. We use monitor, and the thing is that on top of all these products that we have, we try to build some intelligence. We use some cognitive services on top of that. We use some machine learning, and we try to learn from all the metrics that we gather. Yeah, that's the main giveaway point. And if you look back to the old days, monitoring has changed a lot. If you look at the old portal we had, I mean, a lot of people didn't even use this kind of monitoring, and those were basic things. I mean, a lot of people didn't even know that the little check marks that you had up there were clickable and that you can filter it with those things. A lot of people didn't know that. We did an awful job in creating monitoring tools and explaining the capabilities of the damn thing. Enter the V6. It's not an engine, or you can call it an engine, but the new portal gives you even more broader capabilities in creating a real time monitoring experience. We have the ability to create dashboards. We have the ability to pin every single kind of custo query that we have, and we can create alerts based on those things. Custo, is that a buzzword that you guys don't know? No? So custo queries, no clue what it is. So custo is the language that we use inside of application log analytics, and it's a query language. Looks a little bit like a combination of SQL and LINQ. And you create a fluent language on top of that, and you can use that to generate a full query where you can set alerts, you can enable webhooks with it, automation, and you can use it for things like scaling, but also telemetry, bring back, and so on and so on. I'll give you some demonstrations on that in a second. And if we look at all the centrics in there and all these monitoring capabilities, they all go onto one piece, which is a Log Analytics Workspace. Log Analytics is central. And that's the thing. We give you opportunity to do all the logging and all the monitoring, but sometimes we make you create stuff and put it into the wrong workspace. So you probably heard about this OMS workspace thing. That's now Log Analytics Workspace. And in the past, we created one for Security Center. If you have an application insights, we would create a separate one for that. If you create another log application insights, again, a separate one. The beautiful thing is that you can point everything to the same one and then can start aggregating all that data and create a powerful overview query of all your application landscape. So if you have a full solution, you can do a full monitoring of that solution instead of the separate pieces alone. Okay. It does a little bit more than just monitoring, because we use it also as threat protection capabilities. From there out, we do protection like data disaster recovery and backup. We also use it for configuration management and updating. Yeah. So, bringing us to the first part, Azure Application Insights. So for those who've never seen Application Insights, it's a NuGet package that you just inject into your application, and it can be used on multiple levels. You can even use it with mobile applications and pinpoint back the information that you receive from a mobile application or a Windows application and put it back into Application Insights by means of another tool we have called App Center. There's a full export there, and then from there out you can do querying again. So maybe it wouldn't be a bad time to open up our portal and look at a small demo. Here we are. That's not that one. So I have this. Come on. Too many windows open. It's this one, yes. This is the one. Sorry about that. Yes, it's this one. So we have this application that I've deployed through means of Azure DevOps, and it gives me this kind of dashboard back that will automatically generate if you inject application. It's not really visible. Let me just change the coloring on that. Is that readable in the back? Maybe a little bit bigger. Is that okay? Can you see it? Okay. So the results that you get here is you get a whole spectrum of metrics and a whole spectrum of monitoring capabilities out of the box. And you get this by injecting into your code a NuGet package called the Microsoft Application Come on. Oops. That's better. Come on. Ale. Why is Zoom not working when you want it? Let's do it this way. So you have the application inside ASP.NET Core if you're doing .NET, since this is a .NET environment. And a .NET conference, you have this for .NET, but you also have this for Java. You also have this for Node and for other languages. So it comes out of the package management sphere. And you also have for .NET Core, you have this additional thing called live stream metrics, which you then inject with an additional package called application insights.web. If you inject that, and the easiest way of enabling it is just by adding a right click on your application, saying that you want to, now I can't do it anymore because it's already being enabled, but normally you have this enable application insights on your application, and it will enable it from there. If you already have source control and you want to reverse create your DevOps experience through the Azure portal, there's this concept called Azure DevOps project. It will automatically inject that too for you inside of your code, and you don't have to do a lot of tweaking and fondling with your code anymore. But that's not the only part that you can do with it. Injecting something automatically, that's easy. But you can have custom telemetry. You can even have user-based telemetry. And with days of GDPR, you can even anonymize all your data from that perspective. So there's a lot of more bang for buck that you get with doing application insights. If you then do it correctly and you run your application, you can actually use that in both ways. You can use it from the application itself, and as you can see all the sessions going on. You can see how reliable your application is. I have no failed requests whatsoever. The average load time, so these are just basic uptime stats of your application. But there's even more to that, and this is where the real fun in application insights comes. When it comes down to the stability and the troubleshooting of your application, you go back to the Application Insights Workspace. And you have this concept of what we call an application map. Now this map, this one doesn't have a lot of info in there, but this map can actually be very useful when you have a large scale application with a lot of impact. If I were to say this one, for instance. Make the theming here white too. Just change the coloring here. That's going to be better. Voilà. So if you look at the impact of application insights here, this is a complexer application where you have interactions with databases, blob storage. You have static websites in front of it. You have SQL databases. You have application app service plans. You have queues that you can monitor. And this entire application will be mapped, and that you can then use this as a full respect, as we call something we call an enterprise application database. Just like you have a configuration management database, there's also this concept of an enterprise application database, which maps all the interactions that you have from within different solutions. So if you have like interactions also with external systems, these will show up too. If it's servers, we can actually show them up through another piece of the monitor called the server insights, and there's also a service map in there. So they have the same correlation thing. Now, it even gets more interesting once you see these red lines, because that means there's trouble. And if we want to monitor them, if we look a little bit closer on those, you have these suggestions that you will have based upon the different calls that there are. Like for instance, here I'm having a status code 409. Maybe make it a little bit bigger so that you can read it. And there's 45 occurrences of that. I can do an investigation on that, and I can start drilling down. And it even gets more interesting once we are in here and look into all the dependencies. And if you then are a Visual Studio developer and you're doing full ASP.NET Core or plain old vanilla ASP.NET, you can actually look inside of the errors. You get more results here, and if you're lucky and if it's a real system exception, you can actually create a snapshot out of there and just replay the entire situation inside of your Visual Studio, like a real-time playback. So that way you know what happened when the user clicked your web page, clicked that button, and an error occurred, and you want to know why. Some blobs are missing, there's some permissions lacking. You see based on the status code what's going on. So if I can just go to a different sample here, I can show you. There should be one here that is actually a little bit more intelligent. I think this one would be, yeah, this one would be maybe, let's see, 1.1 calls. That's even more interesting. Drill into the dependencies. Let's see. Not giving enough information back. Normally if it's a system error, but it disappeared already. Normally if it's a system error, you can click through and you have this snapshot button hanging over on the right hand, and then it will just open in your Visual Studio and can force play it back. Who knew about this feature? No idea. Okay. At least you learned something today. So your time wasn't useless. Huh? Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to find a good bug here. That's the thing. If Murphy is striking, so the bugs that I want aren't there. Let me just see here. There was one earlier, and now it's gone. Let's see if I can. That's a 409. That's not going to be. Can we have them here? Yes, this one. Top failing. This will be even better. Yes. This will probably, yeah, that's the one that I want. Come on, top 3, now go. Come on. Here we have it. This is still the same one. It's the exception, yeah, but it's there's a call stack. There's a call stack available, and there should be the button. All is fine. Oh, come on. It's not willing to play with me. Right, you just have to take it for granted. It actually just creates a dump and hooks it back into your code. And then from Visual Studio, you can just replay it. It just opens up the code based upon the line where it's actually calling the stack. And then points back and you can start replaying. So all the values have been saved in an anonymous manner, and it hard codes it back inside the Log Analytics Workspace. So it's a big database, and the query you could do, and you can see that from an analytics view. and this is where all the hard work is being done and where all the power comes from, is this is where you do your custom queries. So you can have these complex or less complex queries. You can immediately create charts out of it, and you can pin them just to your dashboard, and you have a fully fledged monitoring solution at your hand. And now you can see here that I opened it from Application Insights directly, and I will only see the application's insights data. But if I do that from another tool, which I'll show in a minute, you will get the full stack of all the data that is being put inside of the Log Analytics workspaces. So it's more than just the Log Analytics part. Okay. So that brings us to part 2. Log Analytics solutions, or formerly known as OMS solutions. So we have this concept in Log Analytics where we predefine some solutions and give you a full overview of what logging is most important for your application or for your environment, even if it's just pure infrastructure. Yeah. Because sometimes you still have this hybrid setup where you still need that, let's say, Oracle server inside of your environment, or you need to monitor back to the environment on premise, for instance, if you're not doing fully fledged PaaS. So how do you reach those? That's a part where monitor comes in. So this is the most underestimated feature inside of the Azure portal, is a search, because you can actually even search on how can I do this or can I do that. I only found out myself that you can actually just give a natural query in there and just say, how do I set up an app service, and it points you to the correct documentation. So it brings you back. But back on topic, so I have here the monitor, and that's another part of the entire talk, because that's the aggregator. I'll give you more info about this, but in the logs part you actually have, when you click it, you actually have a predefined way of looking at where is it? Nope, it's not here. It's not that I wanted. I wanted to do this. Where's my? Oh, in this one it's not set up. That's right. Then I have to open up the other one. That's what you get when you have multiple environments. You keep forgetting where you put everything. Come on. Do it. Here we are. Azure monitors. Alright, just click it from here. Here we are. And they changed it again, apparently. Right. Then we go for the solution part here. That's the thing. Yeah, here we are. I was wrong in pointing it out. It used to be on, even we get confused from time to time, but it used to be under here, and now it's really under the more button. So what they do here, and you can have that from third parties. You can have that from your own perspective. It's a, yeah, that doesn't help. Okay. What it does, it actually generates some visions on top of the log analytics, and they have some predefined blades with some key statistics on there. Like, for instance, in this case, application gateway error logs, some graphs that you can use. You can pin those solution environments themselves directly to your dashboard, so that way you can have a full overview of the solution, which is pointing back to the environment. Here you have, like, for instance, SQL analysis, where you can have an analysis view on your SQL databases. Now the downside is, if it's still an OMS environment, as you can see, a lot of things with me are in error. That's because they're migrating it from OMS to log analytics, and some of these solutions need to be rebuilt. So if you ever do that, it's not you, it's a portal. So don't take it for your own thing. You can even monitor things like Office 365, Service Fabric. This is a server service map. which comes up here. There's updates that you can follow, even automation and OS things. Another thing that arrives back to the log analytics pages is the Azure Security Center. And is anybody here doing active monitoring on security and the impact of your application is in the security landscape? No? Anybody is anybody using Security Center today actively? Nobody? You should do. It comes for free with most of the tools enabled, and the threat mitigation is a thing that you pay extra for. But the cool thing about this solution is that it will follow through when you have breach, when you have execution on source code that is being neglected in your application. It will monitor your web application firewalls, it will monitor your databases, and so on and so on. Now, if you look at this from a developer perspective, it will actually help you to create a better and safer environment from your application landscape. It even integrates with a tool called AZSK, which is the Azure Secure DevOps Kit that you can download for free and that you can also inject into the Azure DevOps environment. And what it does, it scans your Azure deployments regularly and looks for the bad practices that you do when deploying ARM templates. So hardening is a very key thing, but you also looks at some security and salience inside of Visual Studio, for instance, giving you a feedback on you're doing it wrong when implementing hard keys inside of application, giving you feedback on unsafe types, for instance. All these things are being pushed back in the security intelligence thing. If you want the link, I'll show it to you later, and I'll put it in the back of my deck for reference. But these are all free tools that you can download. Now, and that will come back, that AZSK will come back reporting inside of this dashboard. A little bit smaller here. And also from a perspective of active monitoring, you have this thing called threat protection, which generates alerts. And if it's your application, you can actually, by means of a full log analytics query, you can trace that back. And maybe it could be that your code exploited something, triggered something, and somebody got access to your system. If you don't have that correlation and that aggregation of all that data, you cannot do this. Now, we have systems in front of that will monitor actively and be intelligent on the patterns that it sees. Yeah? But if you put that into perspective with your own application, you have a very powerful tool to create a more safer application for your end users or even for your internal application landscape. Now, if you look at the alerts, just to give you a little demo here, the cool part here is the part where you actually see attacks with a let's see, this one for instance, where suspicious processes are being executed. It actually monitors this on a server level, but you can actually also see that on a web application, an Azure web app, for instance. If I click on this, it will graphically represent me, if I do the investigation part, it will graphically represent me all the steps that preceded and all the steps that are following up to that. If it's willing to open. Yeah, here we are. Wait for it. So the suspicious SVC host process, it actually was initiated by this guy called or by this account called Contoso ASC Alert. So it's a fake one because we create these for our own playing. And here you have where it's initiated and additional alerts that come with it. And this creates a full Spectre incident, which you can then pick up. You have endpoint IPs that have been put into your application that are attacking constantly your application. You see which users were being used, what exploit code was being used at that point in time, whether it's been done deliberately or whether it's an external process that it has been doing, and so on and so on. So use this as at your convenience. We've never seen this before. A lot of people. Come on, guys! If you're doing Azure, you need to take this thing serious. It's really useful. All right. So I talked about it a lot of times, but this is the endpoint for this monitoring thing. So we used to have all these things separate: application insights, diagnostics in the bottom, log analytics in the bottom. But today we have the aggregator on top of that, which is a single endpoint API that you can create called Azure Monitor. And you can use that to either immediately read from there just by doing single API calls and have a full aggregate query in there, or you can use that to extend your own logging and monitoring environment. Like for instance, if you're using things like Prometheus, or if you're using Nagios or all these other monitoring tools, or New Relic, you can actually point out the features that you have in your Azure environment and inject them inside of the monitoring tools that you already have. Yeah. It's actually a built-in monitoring support for Azure resources, as I already mentioned, out-of-the-box metrics and stuff. But what it really does, it gives out all the logs and the metrics and the activity logs from infrastructure or from applications, and it enables you to reroute it and route it back to other services. You can use it to query and visualize. You can even pinpoint it back. If you're not a fan of the Azure portal, you can even pinpoint it back to Power BI, for instance, and just query from there, or just create a set of data and create that endpoint for Power BI. That's also a capability that we provide. And if you look at the full landscape and where all the pieces fit in, you actually have an application, an operating system, a resource, a subscription, and a tenant that are constantly being monitored, either by metrics or by logs. And then from there out, we put out the applications itself with application insights. We even have a new thing called container insights for those who are doing Kubernetes and active container monitoring with ACI. We got you covered. I mean, this is where we make the distinction with the other providers. It sounds like a sales pitch, but it really isn't. All these levels of cloud providers, they provide a native Kubernetes experience, but it's the thing that you can do extra with it that make it worthwhile to choose any of them. We have the ability of scaling out easily by means of the insights that we provide by virtual kubelets, but also by actively monitoring your pods, your services, your cluster, and making sure that it can scale from there out. To give you an idea, for those who do Kubernetes with a .NET Core environment, we have, it's the other one, in our monitored environment, if I can see it, here it is. There we are, containers. We can even go up to a service and a certain kind of container levels, looking at the health of your, is my endpoint still healthy, is it still reachable? And then you can put that in perspective again with the application insights telemetry. Like for instance, this one. No, I picked the wrong one. I just picked the one without data. That's not a good idea. Here you have it. So you see the utilization on the node level, you see on the cluster level, you see all the different nodes that are being fulfilled. You know, this is infrastructure, but then from there out you can actually drill down in all the different services that you have, looking how healthy that is or unhealthy that is. In all the containers itself, looking at what kind of applications they're running. Like for instance, this one is running Minecraft, how overutilized it is. And based upon these metrics, you can generate a webhook that automates like a scaling feature, generating an additional container for coping with that load. Because that's the reason why we're doing monitoring. That's the valid point that I tried to make. Monitoring is not only for troubleshooting, it's also making sure that you can fail and scale in a decent way. And this Carl Henrik, who will be doing a talk after lunch. He will be talking about patterns. One of the patterns there is health checking. This is where this comes in. Yeah. Another pattern that he will probably talk about is circuit breakers and independently scaling, loosely coupling. That's also a pattern that we will probably be talking about. This will help you It's a tool to monitor that independent scaling feature and making sure that every level of your solution can fail and scale in a decent way. Because you have to design for failure. That's something we tend to forget. In the past, when we did mainframes, we did provide design for failure because we only had one mainframe. It was really costly. We had to monitor that. Today, resources are not scarce anymore, and we do a lot more with our resources, but we forget that it needs to be failable too. And failing could be throttling, it could be resiliency on data centers burning down, for instance, and disk crashing and stuff like that. Yeah? And that's something we forget, and this is where monitoring really comes in handy when we need it. Okay. The default metrics are in the Metrics Explorer, as I already mentioned, and you can generate from monitors. If we look at monitor here again, we can generate these metrics. You just select your resource. You go for the resource group that you want to monitor, for instance, web retail, in this case. Too many solutions. Retail, here it is. And then you want to monitor on. No, it's not that one. Let's say for Contoso. Okay. Voila, and let's say that we want to monitor our. These are all hardware. Let's go for this one, for instance. Apply. You can select your metrics, and from here out you can select your chart, you pin it back. But there's also no, wait. Taking the wrong one. I forgot what I wanted to say. Okay, lost it. Sorry. Going back to logs. And that was the thing that I want to show you. You can, if you look at a query, you can actually export these constantly to different environments like CSVs, Power BI, as I mentioned. And you can easily, from here out, and this was a thing that I was willing to show you, you can easily generate a new alert rule. So if you set from here out the thresholds based upon your code or based upon that query, you can create a new alert whenever, like for instance, based upon cost, or whenever there is, let's say, come on. This is slow. No. Let's go for this one. Done. And I want to create, for instance, the heartbeat where the number of results is like is less than, for instance, 1. It will give me every 5 minutes it will poll me, and if there's less than 1 in those 5 minutes, that means my machine is down. I will get an email or an SMS, as I can define here. I hope I can do this in here. I can select an existing action group, for instance. I can send mails, I can hang an application alert, I can do push notifications and send it back in the mobile app that we have. because we have an app for Android and iOS where you can have those alerts and make it trigger. You can even have a phone call if you want to, if you integrate with things like Twilio, or send out, like for instance, a push to another monitoring alerting system. You can not imagine it, but you can make it happen. Even a normal webhook, just an API call for like for instance, triggering a web job, updating your resource group, for instance. These are things that you can actually do. Okay, and from that you can have some alert details, set up the entire thing, and just enable it, and it will constantly poll. These alerts are very useful when you want to scale, when you want to have actionables. You can even set up event grids from there out and do automation all over the line. So it goes way beyond than just having just one email or just one SMS. All right. Yes. Afterward, there is a an easy way of finding them, just by typing them in here. Should be showing up. They should be showing up. Yeah, they should be showing up, and they're not. Yes. What do you mean? Yes, it depends on what service you have. Sometimes you, if you want to do real-time logs coming in, like for instance on messaging or something like that. Yeah, then for that you need to stream them with and export them with event hubs, and then you can follow them in real time. There's other things that that support real-time monitoring, like Application Insight has this live metrics thing. That's the only real-time that we provide out of the box, but everything else you can have entailing with event hubs, but then you need to have stream analytics in between, so that way you can have an active monitoring inside of, let's say, Power BI, and then you have real-time. That's actually a good question. I've never given thought of that. Yeah. no, it's a valid point. Yes. Yes. What you could do is you can, if you deploy them through ARM templates and version the ARM template, then you have a version there. But that's actually a valid point. I never given that thought, because you want to make sure that you have the latest version of the rules, and that you see. But we don't have anything in there, and I don't even think we have that inside of the CLI or the command line interface to provide a version or a tag for that. So that's maybe something. Maybe you can put that on the user voice for monitoring. It's open for that, so we can. Let me look into that, because I'm not too sure, and I've never given that any thought. But it makes sense. Yeah. Yes. In the what? In the in the alerts itself, in the conditions, you mean? Yeah. Yeah. For service bus, to be honest, and this is where we fail a little bit. There's things coming up there. I cannot disclose much more, but look for a larger event somewhere near May. We've just announced it this week, and there will be some announcements probably. I know the service bus team is involved now more and more in how the monitoring on service bus and all the underlying and uplying services are working. But if you want to do more active monitoring of your service bus, I can actually tell you, use a third party. Don't use Azure Monitor. If Azure Monitor then is good for everything which is messaging related, but if it really has to be real time, then you actually are better off with exporting them and looking at. You actually did what I asked for. Okay, you actually should be looking at a third-party thing, because out of the box we don't have really narrow interaction there. I must admit. That's a thing. No, it's a fair question, and I'm willing to give you a fair answer. I mean, I'm not going to run around in circles. But that brings me, thanks for bringing that up, that brings me to some things that might be missing inside of, oh, I forgot one demo. But that brings me to something that might be missing. Like for instance, SQL Server, we don't provide yet enough of active monitoring on SQL Server, but we have a great third-party ISV. And since I'm in the ISV sphere, I can talk about partners like SentryOne that does active monitoring of your Azure SQL databases, for instance. But if you want to do something like Service Bus or Event Hubs, we have a thing called a partner called Serverless 360, which is of the Integrate Group, the guys that created BizTalk 360 and Service Bus 360, and now it's called Serverless 360. The image is not updated because I don't have a license anymore, so I cannot demonstrate you that. But you can actually monitor actively on the message bus infrastructure, on the message queues, logic apps, functions, event hubs, IoT hubs, everything which is messaging related. So this will give you more bang for buck than just monitor. For a longer time retention, then monitor comes more in handy, because you can retain it more. And you do have to realize that if you're doing log analytics and you have you want to have longer retention, you need to export it on a regular basis, because we only guarantee for some services like 90 days or 60 days of retention back. So you need to foresee that to yourself. Okay. I think my time is almost up. Looking at the time, yes, it's 5 more minutes, or about 1 more minute, or what is it right now? So there's only one thing to say: thank you for letting me bore you out. I hope you have a great rest of the SweetTalk event. It looks nice. It's my first time here at SweetTalk, not in Sweden. I hope you enjoyed at least some of the information that I have given you, and I hope you found it useful. And don't forget to fill out the evaluation forms, which I see most of the people folding the paper. So have a nice rest of the day. Thank you.